Bene, 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 buon pomeriggio.
So, welcome back. So, this is the second session of this first day. I hope that your lunch break was nice. I hope that you managed to get a good coffee, and we can now continue with the second part of our first day. Terra motrice, earth power in English. From capability to action. We've seen how we started 20 years ago. We've seen how the new generations are getting ready by building their own path on the routes established by the pioneers and the founders and the visionaries who built these 20 years of CIB. This afternoon and then tomorrow afternoon, we're going to get into the details of the regulatory topics and what the different actors of this chain do. Well, let us begin, because this morning we mentioned Europe as a scenario and as an interlocutor, and we are going to begin with a connection with the DG Energy of the European Commission. We are connected with the Directorate Energy of the European Commission. We have with us Biljana Kulisic. She should be here with us, remotely connected. Good morning.
Rome, somehow. So, this morning we mentioned Europe a lot. So we are wondering what's happening with the Commission, what are the vision for the next years, for 2026. So now it's up to you.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me properly?
Yes, perfect.
Good. So first of all, hello, buongiorno. It is always difficult to continue after lunch, so I will try to keep the energy flowing. I'm terribly sorry for not being there in Rome. I know it's a wonderful and buon compleanno. I think it's like that, too cheap. So what I'm going to show you, what is the policy updates, and maybe to give you a wider, not just biogas, but where to place biogas in the whole context, because we have moving targets and moving geopolitical situation. So policy has its own pace, and I can say that although we are working very hard, it's not fast enough to catch up what is happening at the moment. So let's try all together, see what is possible. And I can see that there is sunshine from Brussels coming, but it's don't take it as a wrong message. So let's me share the presentation. So I'll share my slides, share my screen, share, and I put my presentation on. I hope. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I call it update on the EU policies, because biogas and biomethane are interwoven in different policies. It's not just, it's renewable fuel that goes everywhere. So bear with me, it's a little bit wider than what it's zooming out from the mere cubic meter of biogas or biomethane. So what I wanted to highlight before we start into the topic is, where do we come from? What is our energy policy? Because now we are reminding ourselves, what do we start? What is our basic ground? So the basic ground of the energy policy of the European Union is made in 2007, 20 years ago, and I believe that nobody has envisaged this situation. But this is what we get from the Lisbon Treaty, and it is based on two basic pillars, which is the solidarity between member states. So we have uniform goals, but also each of the member states has its own way how to reach it. So sovereignty. So we have solidarity and sovereignty as two major pillars of energy policy in the EU 27 at this moment. So what is important also to highlight, that we have four issues that we would like to take care of, and this is to ensure the functioning of the energy market, which would be in the biogas lingo would be cross-border trade, then the ensured security of energy supply in the EU, in the Union, which would be again in the biogas, biomethane lingo, produce more, promote energy efficiency, energy savings, and development of new and renewable forms of energy, again biogas, reduce the biomethane leakages and produce more, and promote the interconnection of energy networks, which is related more to electricity. So this is what I wanted to have the settings of the energy EU energy policy. So solidarity, EU targets, but then each member state chooses its own path towards these general aims. And I wanted to say that there are some indicators. So we did change. So this is what you see. It's this from the beginning, from 90s to today. We have changed the structure of the energy mix. We have reduced the fossils inside. We did reduce energy consumption to a point. This big ridge is in the recession 2008, and this is the COVID. But we see that the general trends in this more or less not as aspirational as it should be, but they are going to the positive direction. Is it fast enough? We can debate. And then we have the production of this. We have two pies. One pie on the left is what we produce, and the other one is what we use, the one that has orange, sorry, that we import. The orange one that has the orange part, it's much bigger, so the sizes are not proper. So we produce about 500 MTOEs and import about 800 MTOEs, which is quite significant. And you see the structure, what is the difference. The difference is the orange part, which is the oil and petroleum products, and on the green part, on the left side, is the green part dominant, which is the renewables. And here, what we also need to importantly to address is the import dependency, that we cannot get this addiction of the imports, which is 60% in 2023. So 40% of energy that we use in our industry, in our households, in our transport is 40% is homegrown. 60% is imported. And this is something that is quite important in the recent, I would say, weeks and months. But what we want to talk about this today is this natural gas. And we see that natural gas is, it's insignificant, let's say it, in the homegrown energy mix. However, it's quite significant in the imports. So this is what we are talking about. We did reduce some of the natural gas consumption, but molecules will be always attractive to some sectors. And then I will show you what is the solidarity and what is sovereignty. So here you will see the crude oil and petroleum products and renewable energy share for 23 in the EU, and this is solidarity. So this is the union target, and you see that some member states are quite up and quite some down. So depending, it's different share. And also in the renewables, it is also quite different. You have some member states that are above and some below the union joint target or the achievement. And you can see here in all these dot or these bubbles, you can see Italy that is having quite balanced approach in the overall sovereignty and solidarity, given the historical ties and the renewable energy options that Italy has. But then what is important to highlight for Italy here, but also I will give you so this is a little bit focused on Italy, but you can place Italy in this in EU 27 and also in EU averages. When you see where is the electricity and gas prices for the first half of 25, you know more than me that the prices of today or this week are much higher for natural gas, but and they are already in the range of production costs of biomethane. But however, what is this point is that we have different prices for different consumers. So we have electricity prices for households and different electricity prices for non-household consumers, also with gas prices and gas consumers. And then the question is, here what you have here in the green parts, these are the prices because it's too little. So I pointed out what is the price in Italy, what was the price in Italy. But what is important here is to question whether we compare when producing biomethane, whether we compare with the electricity prices or we compare with the gas prices, because there is overall electrification, but where electrification will not come, there will be the molecule. So what is the competition then? What is the competitive price? What is the alternative? And then when you look, also there are different, why do we need this sovereignty together with solidarity? If you compare the electricity prices, for instance, for Finland, which is quite here down, the lowest prices, with the ones that Italy had in 25, you see that there will be different pathways to consider from biogases in both of this sector, whether it's going to be biomethane or biogas for electricity and heat. So different ways and different approaches and different consumers will lead actually biogas and biomethane national markets. And then when we have here this renewable energy policy and what is the share, we always look at this solidarity, and these are the union shares, and we see that it took us about 20 years, 2 decades to get to 25% of renewable share. And we didn't start from zero, we started from 9.6%, and which was basically at that time solid biomass mostly. And the question is, whether can we make this leap in the next few years by 2030 to double it almost, or do we need to change something because it took us 20 years, 2 decades to come to this point of 25, 1/4 of renewables. So what is also important for the policy officer to look what was happening in the policy behind these bars or achieved shares. So what we see that the different, we now the red 3 or it's still in the implementation, the annexes 5 and 6 are still in the update. So it is a question whether this should continue, this framework, or whether we should take a different approach, different measurements. How do we postpone? How do we go beyond 2030? And this is basically what I wanted to tell you, that we are thinking very, very deeply on the options, how to continue with this, because obviously this pace is not fast enough to lead us to the sovereignty as a EU 27. So that we have the policy updates on general bioenergy. So you know that we had this delegated directive amending Annex 5 and 6. Annex 6 is super important for biogas sector. And we had closed it with 160 substantial comments. They are full of substance, and I thank you very much. And while I'm not presenting as today in the conference, I am assessing these 160 rich comments. Then we have the stakeholder consultation strategy on the post-2030 framework, and we will have the update on heating and cooling strategy and a new policy tool on biogas and biomethane, which is biogas tripartite agreement, which is scheduled for this Q2. And we are really, I cannot highlight enough the support from the stakeholders, and in particular Italian stakeholders, with the knowledge and with the wisdom that you have gained in the technical comments. So thank you for that. So let's go now to this tripartite. You have seen this many times already, but the tripartite has part itself in the action for supporting diversifying by demand aggregation and better use of infrastructure in repower roadmap, because we always have to give where it's anchored, and then it's stemming from affordable energy action plan. And now I never thought that I will say this affordability, but now in this current context, the biomethane becomes affordable, and now it's the moment to harness this affordability. And then you are also familiar with this concept of tripartite, and I can see from what I know from the Italian biogas market that you have more or less, maybe not formalized, but you already have tripartite at the national level because the government of Italy is closely working with the industry through the Biogas National Association, and you're also having the consuming industry. So you have kind of already tripartite at the national level. So there is nothing much to say. However, if this tripartite is brought to the EU level, then you will have an added value, I hope, with the European Commission to help you broaden your topics. Because, for instance, in Italy, I would imagine if you continue with this pace of developing the national market, you already have wonderful knowledge, high capital in know-how and in the industry production and in development of the investments. And it would be pity if this knowledge and all this know-how is confined with the national border. It would be also pity not to be able to claim the biogas that has been made with Italian efforts outside of Italian borders to claim it for Italian targets. But let's talk about those issues when biogas tripartite is going to be signed. So objectives of the tripartite agreement is basically very lean, produce more sustainable biogases faster and at lower price. Because now, if ever we need more homegrown energy, and biogases are quite flexible, dispatchable, storable. I don't have to explain that to this audience. And these are the identified action areas in the tripartite agreement. However, these have been identified at the beginning, which was a year ago, I think, that we started to have these discussions, and we are going to update those when we have the tripartite signed. And what is the status of this moment? We have consulted about everyone, to be honest, about 500 stakeholders and more, either through the industry associations, either through the different networks. So we have consulted lots of stakeholders and gathered all the ideas into these 4 pages non-binding voluntary agreement with 3 parties, which are the denominator, but under each of these party of tripartite, there is a whole group of stakeholders. So on the production side, we had the stakeholders representing the industry, the urban biogases, the farmers, the landfill. So it's amazing part of this product from the production side. And then on the use side, because it's fuel, we have also crowded end users from maritime to industry, transport, so heavy industry. So it was very difficult to balance it out. And the last batch of the inputs that we got from the stakeholders, from the demand and supply side, we just couldn't take into consideration because, to be honest, it was very difficult to adjust the wording to fit, for instance, digestate users and, for instance, aluminium industry. So heavy hard to abate industry. So it was very difficult to bring all the stakeholders on board. And that's why we have this imperfect biogas tripartite agreement. However, this is the only political initiative at this moment on this topic from the side of Commission. And to my personal opinion, I would prefer that we sign it and we start actually working on the substance. So what we have, the last final version is made a few weeks ago. The letter has been sent on the time frame when to propose certain signatures. We have the upcoming presidency of Ireland, which is keen on biogases it's still nascent market, but keen on biogases. So maybe we will fit there. And we have also on the European Sustainable Energy Week, we have panel slot arranged together with European Biogas Association. And there is also 20 years anniversary of European Sustainable Energy Week, where Commissioner is going to be present. So we hope that we will take advantage of this event to make it something more, but let's see if all the agreements will be reached at this moment. So if you feel that there is a high interest of you to sign this tripartite agreement, please send a letter of intent either to the cabinet or to me, so we can highlight the moment where the biogas and biomethane are quite needed, and and to my how to say, disappointment, but for the all good reasons, the market is stagnating. We do have the investments coming, but we don't see them in the statistics. So that is something that we have to wish for, but you know how it is. Until it's started production, you don't know when it's going to start exactly. So this is what I had prepared for you today, and thank you very much. I try to be condensed and not take too much of your time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Kulisic. Thank you for your presentation. It was very clear. Thank you for explaining the commitment of the European Commission. Thank you so much. We wish you all the best from Rome on a sunny day in Brussels. Ok, grazie, arrivederci.
Thank you for your words, and we are waiting eagerly for the beginning of the Energy Sustainable Week and the Irish presidency. And yesterday we celebrated not just the unification of Italy, but also St. Patrick's Day. So in Rome there were some celebrations carried out by our Irish friends. So we are now going to hear more about the way in which all this, as was illustrated, impacts in practical terms on Italy and its situation. We have Marco Pezzaglia with us. Welcome back, and the floor is over to you.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti. Scusate, eccoci qua. Siccome tutti danno i numeri, mi sono divertito anch'io a contarli.
So, I am celebrating my 17th year with the CIB, and I was working for the authority before becoming a member. Then I realized that eventually regulators and the industry all share the same goals, so there aren't really different parties involved. There is just a difference in terms of the role played. So after the many ideas that were illustrated this morning, it's not easy to get on this stage because some very interesting and good things were said about the development of our system. But what we are doing this afternoon is we're going to move from the vision we shared this morning to the actual implementation phase from a regulatory standpoint. Why? Well, because as CIB, starting from our imagination ideas, let's say, we moved on to implementation ideas, which then became proposals and which eventually were turned into technical and regulatory decisions, decrees, decisions, etc., that regulate the projects eventually leading to the production of gas. That's where we go, that's our direction. So let us look at our recent history. Our director always reminds us that in 2015 there was a meeting dedicated to biogas, and we were young then. I remember participating in this General Assembly, General Conference, and over time we collected our ideas. Well, we cannot start from 2015 because that's too long ago, but anyway, in 2021, when Biogas Italy started becoming the fuel that we are now familiar with, But back in 2005, in 2021, our implementation idea started focusing on several aspects. First of all, market, two, grid, three, value for consumers. And in 2021, the TM 2022 wasn't there yet. There was just TM 2018 that had some difficulties in being implemented at the time. So the grid was in difficulty. DM 2018, as far as some profiles were concerned, was a bit imperfect because it was stating that some things can be converted, but what is not converted was not regulated. So it was a bit, hazy. But as we shall see, 2018 did produce results. But in 2021, we were already conceiving implementation. So we were thinking about biomethane reaching the market. We needed to have a functioning a grid capable of responding to challenges. Getting to 2022, we didn't have to Biogas Italy. We moved on to 2023, and we started thinking about something that was more implementation oriented. So we thought we wanted to change the regulatory framework. We wanted to access the market in a guaranteed way. Then there was the dedicated collection by GSE, and we already had a decree. So we wanted to make all this work. And in 2024, proposals started to take shape. And we came to realize that biomethane generation is distributed. So we started thinking, well, in the electrical field, distributed generation was very much supported. In the field of biomethane, we should think that the different plants and production plants should be connected to the grid. So transportation, distribution, producers were the three aspects to be considered. Then regulations were passed. And in 2024, we had already started realizing that the biomethane molecule was valuable for the consumers. We had realized this in 2021, but in 2024, this became an actual proposal. Then we got to 2025 last year when the ideas had already been, let's say, developed. So at the time already, the system was already, well sketched out. So the idea was to grant continuity to the sector. In other words, being able to continue working with that bridge that had been imagined between 2024 and 2025, or also before 2023, with the PMGs, which is an extremely important bridge solution in order to reach our other goals. And we wanted to give, in 2025, we wanted to give substance to this idea of the value of this product for consumers. In 2025, at the beginning at least, not everything had been completed, and still this path had to be finalized. And we also wanted to continue to give value to biogas and biomethane production as a founding engine or power behind new farming. And that's how we got to the first results. I'm going to skip these slides or go very quickly because GSE is going to illustrate these figures again. But this is the functioning status, the state of the art of the situation. Sorry, the situation so we have this decree dating back to 2018 that established certain figures for 2018, and you see all the figures in the lower part of the chart. The 2030 goal is 35 billion. So this is the monitoring. But we get two messages today from this slide. First of all, a transportation sector that is over 1 billion in terms of consumption, which is not still covered fully by biomethane. We are at 800 million, more or less. We are going to receive updated numbers shortly. So there's a transportation sector which still can be covered with biomethane. 2022, well, goals have been assigned, but to reach 2030 goals, still we need to go a long way forward, much more than we have done so far. So we get to the point where we see that the system has provided answers concerning the fact that what we are going to do in terms of new things must give the industry enough time for goals to be achieved. So we not need to reason to a goal that is not from today to tomorrow. We have to look to the future on a long-term basis. So we have looked at goals and objectives already. And so how do we reach these goals? Well, with a sector that, we must be open, reacts with an impressive capacity between 2019 and 24, production capabilities increased sevenfold. But if we go back for a moment, we look to the lower part of the screen, to move to the upper part, this reaction capacity must be maintained. So we must possess tools that make us capable of continuing to react in the same way. And we need also enough time for this capability to be implemented on the territory. So this ability to react by the sector has always been there, has always existed with biogas, biomethane, etc. So the farming sector, when it has the right tool, well, it can work effectively.
Questo è il messaggio fondamentale che
This is the message that we have drawn from this experience, and we must continue to share this message. How are we going to get there? Well, in 2025, around June, we got cover. So all the funds were allocated, so all the plans that are part of the calls were authorized. The deadline is no longer the 30th of June 2027, but the 4 months that will follow the concession agreements. So the National Recovery and Resilience Plan has been fulfilled. Now we have to build the plan, so we have to roll up our sleeves and get back to work. How are we going to get there? This is the distance of the plants from the grid, and it is broken down by cluster. A bit more than 20%, less than half a kilometer. So 30 to 40% of the plants are within 1 kilometer range. But many are 2 to 5 kilometers from the transportation network. So it's pretty evident that a first change of pace is necessary for 2026. In 2023, we already said that. We have to rely on the distribution networks. And meanwhile, the instruments were made available. So the switch boxes, the resolution of the authority, a very recent one, 67 of 2026. I think it was passed last week, which was also included in the budget law. For connection applications that will be presented after the resolution has been passed, there's a reverse ratio to be applied. So 30% a producer, 70% the system. Before it was basically the opposite. And this is already applied to the new applications if an application request is filed now. Another important point is that this resolution will have an impact on other two very important factors regarding the costs that are going to be incurred by the system and not by the producers. There will be consultations. We don't know what the outcome of these consultations shall be, but the deadline is the 31st of December 2026, and by then we will have to have a new regulation for connection to the grid. And this is another very important point to share. the existing plants, one of the requests of the past was for no plant to be closed down. Well, digestion can be modulated but cannot be switched off for a month and then be resumed when it comes to biogas. And if we switch off the plants, we will not switch them back on and we will lose this treasure to move forward. So, by way of principle, the plants that have been built should never be switched off. What is happening is very important, but every X number of years we are here saying that we need energy. So let's not complain, please. In between wars, thinking about switching plans, well, frankly speaking, it wouldn't be a great idea, but this is not what the system is asking for. The system is given signs for the system to evolve in a certain direction. So the sign is not to switch off the plans, but to do something more, something different, given the new needs that have emerged. But this is important because we know very well that there has been a new decree law on the bills that has been recently passed, the Decreto Bollette, regarding the reduction of burdens on consumers. And this is a goal that is understandably shared. But what is happening now calls for reflection regarding the energy independence of our system. We must remember that if we talk about burden on consumers, the biogas decree has impacted insofar as 100 million out of 1.2 billion. It is a sector that is basically shifting towards biomethane. So there's a transfer of these obligations, of these burdens that was embedded in the biogas sector. The decree approved by the cabinet is the object of parliamentary debate, and hopefully with the work that is being carried out with parliamentary committees, the new scheme will give a sign, positive sign, but will help us continue to work with the existing plans, and those who need to will be converted. By way of conclusion, we asked for a few things, and some of these things have come to pass. We asked that the National Recovery and Resilience Plan was adjusted to an actual industrial development, and this happened. That the decarbonization power of biomethane could become part of the environmental budget of consumers, and this happened. Thanks to the decree law on agriculture and subsequent acts. And it is not the DL Bollette that is going to stop this trend. Maybe it is redressing the balance a little, but the DL farming keeps being implemented as it was originally meant to. We asked that no one be left behind, and an effective answer was actually given to this. Hopefully, we are going to keep doing this. Otherwise, it would be a pity. But we are pretty confident that this is not going to happen. We asked for the grid to create an actual connection for the development of biomethane, which is distributed generation. And this has happened, meaning that with the procedure authorized last year, we had the authority here saying that the resolution was about to be passed, and it actually was. A new instrument was introduced, and then there's the new resolution included in the budget law that is promoting a stronger coordination with the distribution networks. We asked to have a longer-term vision for the whole sector. The DL facility has given the answer it could give in the plan, so extending the deadline for the implementation of the projects, and the DL Bullet has already anticipated another decree. So we are on the way we are on the right path. So everything we asked for, well, was just an idea, then an actual request, and then actions were taken, and the results are here. So the way has been paved. Where are we going to go? Well, we have reached 14% of the European goal when it comes to biomethane. If we look at our own backyard, these are long-term scenarios of Snam and Turner. With 5 billion, we would cover 30% of the national gas needs. And we know that electrification cannot be an answer to everything, so renewable gas is a good answer. Acting as a system, all these efforts have contributed to make us work as a system. We talk to each other. We are two sides of the same coin. The renewable molecule coming from agriculture meets the consumer that needs this renewable molecule for consumption. So a system has been created since when the DL Agricultura, the DL Agriculture has become effective. We have to thank all the parties involved for this. CIB has witnessed the sales process towards the hard-to-abate industry of more than 30 million of 90 million of 5 cubic meters of biomethane from independent farms. So this is a very good experience to share. Very last slide, last two, then I'm done. I'm truly done. The low carbon intensity is a hidden treasure. If we look at the EUA futures values and we translate them into the geo values for the ETS system, we will find values that are not, we'll find numbers that are not something so surprising, from 14 euro to almost 20. This is the trend we observed on the European marketplace of the Geo ETS. But if we look at how other markets outside Italy are looking at the decarbonization potential of biomethane, we would discover that the value of decarbonization is way higher. This must not be an idea to say, well, I will build a plant in Italy and then move abroad. Please no, this is not the idea. The idea is to say that in Italy too, we must open this box of the decarbonization power that our biomethane holds. Why not opening up this box in Italy as well, allowing our consumers to grasp the extra value of the carbonization beyond the minimum savings threshold that is imposed on us for sustainability purposes. So the energy equivalence of the ETS system does not justify the actual environmental quality of biomethane. And the biomethane in the Italian farming sector has a very high potential. So this extra value, we have it, so we have to expose it somehow. And placing more value on the decarbonization potential through the market is essential to allocate development costs efficiently, because we must not hide behind a finger. Developing means incurring costs, and we have to find a way to allocate these values in the most effective way, the most efficient way, so that this money is then returned to the community. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marco Pezzaglia. Marco, stay with us, please, because we would like to continue the debate And we are doing that with our friends from the GSE, from the Ministry of the Environment. In the room with us, there's Dario Valenzano from the GSE. Good morning, Davide, and welcome. And connected remotely, we have Federico Boschi, Head of Department of the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. Good morning. Are you there? No, maybe he's going to join us in a minute. So let's start from Davide. We saw the numbers. We saw the scenario that Marco has illustrated. So the role of the GSE is becoming more and more important. We talked about it this morning, the international crises, the war, the energy mix that is changing, the growing importance of renewables. How is your work moving forward to have a return on the investments that have been envisaged within the framework of the Next Generation EU and even beyond that? So thank you very much for the renewed invitation to this event, and happy birthday again. So we are in a peculiar context. Gas prices are skyrocketing, so the value of biogas production and biomethane is becoming more and more appreciated. We are in a context where the country, through the GSE, which is the enabling agent of decarbonization, of electrification, is setting the goal of the zero target, let's say, of continuing with production from all biogas plants, and to make sure that the highest number of biogas plants are converted to biomethane. So there was a very long negotiation between the consortium and with the Ministry and the European Commission to secure the more than 500 biomethane project for production capacity of more than 230 standard cubic meter an hour. So the 5 auctions managed by the GSE have guaranteed the acceptance of these proposals. So the initiatives are to be taken and finalized within June, but through a financial facility, by focusing our efforts over the next few months, through the GSC producers, we will have 24 additional months to finalize all this, so that the targets of the project are actually achieved. So the strategic goal has been met. And this is what we were negotiating with the European Commission, making sure that all the selected projects could be actually implemented. And therefore, making sure that all the 2.2 billion euro made available by the EU could be used somehow. So we are working on this with the Ministry and with the European Commission. We know that transitions have happened in between measures rather than delays. Some operators have been caught in the middle of this journey. So some of them have realized their initiatives and they are waiting for the financial resources to finalize them. But as I was saying, we've been caught in the middle of this journey. We will soon finalize the agreement with the European Commission, and hopefully over the next few weeks we will sign with the Ministry the implementing agreements, so these contracts whereby we will gain access to the financial resources that will allow us to speed up the authorization process, so that the initiatives that are part of the projects will start being profitable. In order to make sure that no one is left behind, we are thinking of issuing a communication upfront. We have already made sure that these projects, a bit less than 50 plants, are already operational for 20,000 standard cubic meters an hour. So many plants are operational already. So we're going to make sure through this communication that they are informed that they are eligible from a technical standpoint, and hopefully this communication of ours could also help with the profitability of their biomethane production activities. Another very positive sign is that despite this passage, despite this shift from a performance-based measure to a financial measure, we are witnessing a tremendous number of communications for commencement of work. So these commencement of work notices refer to plans that will be operational starting from 2026. Many will be fully operational in 2027 or 2028. And these initiatives will contribute to the decarbonization process. And we are trying to make sure that precisely no one is left behind. And the same is true for those plants that for technical reasons or even financial reasons are having trouble being converted to biomethane, and there are important assets for power generation. So the estimate of the minimum guaranteed price is meant to guarantee continuity, so a going concern process. So even the smallest plants are not willing to make a commitment to be converted to biomethane because they're having more trouble being converted due to the high costs. But we're interested in making sure that these plants can continue with their power generation role, contributing to decarbonizing the electricity sector. Thank you very much. Thank you, Davide Valenzano. Marco, I think we're going in the direction you were hoping for. I'm referring to numbers and directions. So I think the path is clear. Yes, we warmly welcome this will of protecting all the efforts that have been made in the past by transforming what can be transformed to meet the needs of the system, to have a gas in sector that is decarbonized or as decarbonized as possible. And this is something that we welcome very positively. This is not going to happen on its own, of course. Collaboration is needed. And to interact with the industrial sector, that's key to make sure that these goals are reached. This is what happened in the past, so hopefully this is how things will proceed as we move forward. So our friend from the Ministry of Environment is not here yet, so I would like to thank Davide Valenzano and obviously our Marco Pezzaglia. Thank you truly. Let's talk about grids. And Nicola Battilana from SNAM. Welcome. There's a lot to say here. Integration between sources is more and more strategic. So biomethane is a key carrier, even more so now. So how are things unfolding in 2026? Thank you for the kind invitation, and good evening, you all. Well, biomethane, as already said by the previous speakers, has a great value when it comes to integration. And I'm referring to the integration into the energy mix. And its value in the reduction of imports is even more evident today. This is definitely helpful to make us more independent and to make the Italian energy mix be more independent from imports. There's a question of circularity, environmental and economic alike, that biogas has also in part, because also biogas allows you to have positive impacts from an environmental standpoint. There's obviously the interchangeability with the other gases of fossil origin that are perfectly integrated in the energy grids, either transportation or distribution networks. The role of SNAM in this growth process was to facilitate somehow and speed up even the whole process, starting from the preliminary stages, access to the connections, financial guarantees that are more in line with the actual needs. So by simplifying the process and also the timeline for the actual connection to happen. The financial commitment is flexible or modular to guarantee connection. And the breakthrough happened in 2004 with the implementation following the resolution 131 by ARERA of the mapping of all the networks and the grids that helped us understand where there's a greater vocation to receive incoming volumes. And also the realization on this NUM portal of a division dedicated to these inquiries that are anonymous, of course, where you can verify how close the networks are, the grids are, and the ability to be connected, and also any other elements that might be useful to have a preliminary estimate of the costs associated with connection. Well, the optimization procedures was what has accompanied us over the past 18 months. And it is very important because it is a procedure where SNUM operates as a single point of contact in the collection and the assignment of the connection requests. And it is important because it guarantees efficiency, the efficiency of the solution that is eventually picked. So it is important to guarantee that the system and the users of the energy system, especially gas system, that the solutions that are eventually implemented are truly the most cost-effective. And I believe that this procedure has probably become the underlying factor that has been common to the almost 500 applications for connection to the grid. Most of them, more than half, have been granted based on criteria that are defined as being automatic, very simple to ascertain. So distance, for example. There was a very timely assessment of every cost item throughout the connection process to identify the solution with the lowest additional cost over the 20 years of shelf life of these plants. The new regulatory provisions introduced by the latest budget law go in this direction. So the aim is to further streamline the process and to minimize connection costs for these producers. Well, I think it is anyway key the role of the role of the procedure to look for the most efficient connection also in this context.
E allora vengo a lei.
But Ilana, well, I will come to you. Starting from the new regulations, how the integration process has been facilitated across the networks and what's impact they're going to have when it comes to the distribution of the plants.
Pomeriggio a tutti.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to use some slides myself to be able to make some examples. Well, the new rules that were illustrated so we have a few difficulties with our remote control, as it always happens in any household. Whenever I want to watch tennis, I end up watching something else. Anyway, I'm not going to read to you what the official journal says, but I'm going to focus on three important elements that were anticipated by Marco concerning a principle. First of all, the right of injection, as it is called also in other countries. It is the principle according to which if a producer is ready to transfer the biomethane produced in the grid, then the grid has to do what is necessary to receive it. So the second element goes in this direction by making all the people in the infrastructure to carry out all the necessary steps to make the grid flexible. It means broader, maybe introducing some innovative elements which I'm going to describe, making it possible to receive this biomethane. The second point has to do with a very important topic, which is what is the allocation split in terms of costs for connection between what should be paid by the producer and what is borne by the system as a cost. So in particular, the issue of the flexibility of network makes reference to a very important theme which we also considered concerning people entering the grid and whenever the plant is located at a significant distance in connection with the grid, this has raised an issue whenever people wanted to connect, also because the distribution grid or the city grid, which is usually low pressure, is not sufficiently big to receive all that amount of gas. What do we mean by this? It means that the demand and the consumption of users in that networks are below the injection capacity by the producer who wants to inject biomethane in that part of the grid. So finally, this regulatory evolution has acknowledged the technical tools that allow us to overcome this issue, particularly with the recognition of the reverse flow technology. So the system can be connected and then the distributor will have to recompress the excess gas by pumping it again on the high pressure transportation grid without the producer having to be involved in this part. So the production of biomethane this way can always be received by the transportation network or the distribution one, depending on the situation, thanks to these technical solutions. This regulatory evolution represents a regulatory recognition, but the reverse flow systems, in addition to being already present in Europe and in other countries. They're also being produced in Italy, created in Italy. But because there is no reference legal framework, they were experimentations. And the three you see here are already, they have been completed. And in part, they were financed by ARERA through a decision on innovative projects, 404 ARERA law. So there are some plants that are already ready to use. They're not functioning at the moment because the biomethane that should transport gas in those regions is not ready yet. But from a technical perspective, we are talking about mature technology. And as you can see below, we are also starting to produce it proactively where the network can be made to accept the produced biomethane. I would like to end on cost by making an example. Nicola has already presented the principles of the new regulation. I would like to make some examples with rounded up data. Let us consider a methane 1 kilometer away from the distribution network, 500 standard cubic meters per hour in terms of size, and the network, the grid in that area can absorb 100% of the produced biomethane. In this case, the cost of connection in terms of pipings, the system, etc., is slightly below 1 million euros. But it's a bit less. But I mean, this is the approximate rounding up until yesterday. So up until 2025, specifically, this allocation, 80-20, with 100% paid by the producer, made the cost for the producer to be around 800,000 euros. With the new mechanism that was described earlier by Nicola, the cost at this point, which is borne by the producer, decreases to 210,000 euros. So from the standpoint of the producer, connection costs are considerably abated. I mean, we're talking about a 65-70% decrease rebate. And I think this is good news, as it was said earlier. And this new thing has been implemented with the new estimates for connection. It has been active since last week, and it represents a very great support for the promoting the development of this sector. Well, yes, undoubtedly, it is a really, really important and significant. And I mean, the audience was no doubt surprised. Let us wait for a moment because we might be connected with the ministry. So thank you, Nicola Battilana, and thank you, Lorenzo Romeo, for your presence and for your words, and we hope to see you soon. So we will continue our journey, and we do so with two other panels. One which is going to see the presence of 4 new guests, and I'm inviting them right away. We have here with us the President of International Gas Union, Andrea Steger, who is here with us. Good morning and welcome. Good morning, Mr. Steger. We have with him Senior Advisor for Energy and Sustainable Development, Confindustria, Andrea Andreuzzi. Good morning and welcome. There is also here with us the President of NGV, Maria Rosa Baroni. Good morning to you and welcome. Here we are. And the first panel will also see the presence of the General Manager of Proxigas, Marta Bucci. Good afternoon to you and welcome. So let us try and analyze with you the other aspects that we have started describing concerning not just the regulatory framework for the networks, but also in greater detail the players in this chain. Mr. Steger, I would like to begin with you because after looking at the development of the national market, you are now dealing with the international scenario, and So what is your opinion about what we have done in Italy and what is happening all around us in a context that, starting from this morning, is increasingly more complex and complicated when energy crises are taking place one after the other? Good afternoon. First of all, it's a great pleasure for me to be back to Biogas Italy again. I've had the chance of meeting so many friends with whom we shared a part of the path that has led to the development of biomethane. When we began, it was an important project indeed, but undoubtedly it still had to be, implemented. And this is what is happening now. 1.5 months ago, I was in Doha. This to give you an idea what is happening. And today, I have the honor and the responsibility of presiding over the International Gas Union, which represents 70 countries, 90% of the world market, and we're talking about 3.5 trillion cubic meters of gas. Quite a figure, indeed. And IGU has in itself so many different situations, and we include something that we defined gas with a capital G. It doesn't just mean that we are the best, but we are part of an energy system which is evolving. And I stopped using the word transition a few years ago. We may open up a new chapter if needed, where evolution means to broaden technological opportunities and tools so that gas molecules and the associated tools, etc., are necessary for any future development. And Armin Decker this morning was reminding us of the energy trilemma. Well, for me, this is an all-rounded sustainability notion. We have to be sustainable dynamically through security, sustainability, and the environment. And we must remember that gas is made up of different, very different types of gases, such as biogas, etc. So Europe is best practice, Italy's best practice, thanks to the biogas on rights. And if I remember correctly, I think it was in 2015 that the title was The Rules of the Future. And Dan Peters was reminding us this morning that in 2017 we launched this project that was Gas for Climate, that was very important at the European level. So I do feel I'm a member of this family in some way. So at the European level, a lot is being done. At the international level, many things are being done. And in 2022, I was in South America, and in Brazil, we started hearing about biomethane. And I was in a G20 event, and the title was The Role of Natural Gas in the Transition Towards Sustainable Development. So there was already a strong time of acceleration that I think may count on the possibility that, again, all the excellence that was developed at the national and European level may be transferred. And as IGU, of course, I am available to promote this expansion, and because we do need more auctions. And I would like to say something about the theme of transition. Sometimes we forget that the world energy demand is growing, and we do need more energy, more forms of energy, and more forms of energy that have the possibility of reducing emissions. So I'm not talking about the role of coal at the world level, but that's the elephant in the room, really, quite evidently. Crises exist, and if we go back to today's crisis, it is a sizable one, undoubtedly, and we hope as that energy infrastructure is protected not as it is happening, because we know that our energy infrastructure is being attacked. But at the gas level, we're talking about something which, in terms of volumes, has an impact on three basic countries: Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. From the standpoint of price, the tension is extended to the entire world, because the situation sees a tension and lack of investment. So investments have to be produced. Biomethane is included in these investments, but we must look beyond the medium term. And Mascopezzaglia, of course, was talking about this. When we speak about these projects, we must look to the long term, to give certainty to the trade members, to allow them to be able to make projections. And this is part, and I conclude this digression. But next week, as IGU, we are going to publish a brief on biomethane. This was not intended. I mean, this is something I just wanted to give you as an update. Well, we are looking forward to next week then. Now, Andrea Steger, thank you for your words. Andrea Andreuzzi. So, we talk about energy and sustainable development at Confindustria. The penetration of biomethane, we mentioned this morning, may be important in sectors such as in the hard to abate sector, where it can actually be crucial. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you, Piero Gattoni. So today we can remember what we did together with CIB in the past few months, and the work we carried out with the ETS committee in order to make it possible to use biomethane in the hard-to-abate sector and be able to account for it, and the various decrees that were passed. And from my viewpoint, all these are really tripartite agreements, because when the European Commission was talking about tripartite agreements earlier, the first reference, no doubt, is energy release as an experience that we gained in Italy. So also the agriculture decree, because we have the government's intervention through the NRRP promoting this connection between producers and consumers. It's a tripartite agreement, so we must continue to go along those lines. And at the moment, this framework was improved and perfected and defined. So now we can consider all the improvements that were made that allow us to go in this direction of shared work, because ETS by itself would not be able to promote the production of biomethane by itself. Otherwise, we would have to have a level of emission shares much higher than the needs of the industry and the inflation could cause. So side measures in addition to the ETS could be essential, and trying to develop these measures is essential. And I was happy to hear what the GSE said. And I believe that, and I don't know if there are going to be further documents made known or released or not, but what is important to us is to continue promoting this shared work also through the energy release as applied to biomethane. So the role of GSE may be that of a facilitator. It may have a certain development starting from the positive experiences that were recorded over this time and going in that direction, because as we heard, the hard to abate are now in a situation where to decarbonize, they do not see that many solutions, and electrification is not for everyone. And if they want to decarbonize, that CCS is not yet developed for them to access. And when hydrogen has costs that are still unsustainable if we just look at the market, and then in this case biomethane becomes a solution that is seen as the solution in some cases to decarbonize emissions. So also the intention in terms of increasing biomethane production capacity is something that is decidedly positive, and I do see that the government intends to promote this capacity. And this is also essential for companies, so for firms. So thank you for inviting me, and I hope we can continue working together. Thank you, Mr. Andreuzzi. I'm sure that the GSE files will be given back to the representative that has left them here. Mr. Baroni, another one of the sectors that we mentioned this morning is that of transportation. So in this field, biogas and biomethane could do so much. From your perspective as a president of NGV, what are the actions we should undertake? Mrs. Baroni. Thank you. Well, we were So NGV represents the transportation chain sector from the industry to the actual use of biomethane and the production of biomethane, because we started collaborating with Piero Gattoni when I was appointed the first time as president of the NGV many years ago. And Piero at the time was taking his first steps. So we met as when we were young, in a sense, not in terms of age, but in terms of the development of this sector. And it was a very interesting journey. I am personally a very curious person in life. So as early as 2001, I'd heard about something that was called biomethane, but nobody was really talking about it. So I went to Sweden to take a look at this first plant in Nyköping, where the production of biomethane from crops existed, though it was very small, and they produced fuel, and they also used it for heating schools, etc. I immediately fell in love with this because I've always supported this idea of the circular economy. And also as a mother, I never wanted to, I hate this idea of throwing things away. Everything is important and should be preserved. And we see today that energy consumption and how energy is important, but we know how fragile is to have certainties in terms of supply. I'm coming from Trieste, north of Italy, northeast Italy, where I was invited by Ms. Tajani on the occasion of IMAGE, India Mediterranean European corridor, which should replace the Silk Road. Well, unfortunately, the people who had been invited and coming from the Gulf and Africa couldn't be there, to the point that the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Abu Dhabi had to take his own private jet, not even a state one, because there are no flights. And he was telling me that we are not aware of the problems they have. So the information we see is just the tip of the iceberg. Why would they have huge problems also in terms of their own production of fuel? So never as much as today do we need to be as independent as possible in the fuel sector. And biomethane, again, is the response, is the answer that we have at our disposal. And this is the answer that NGV tries to support. Unfortunately, and I often go to Brussels, I usually go there to have arguments, to support our views, etc. There are some things there that really need to be changed, and here we are asking for everybody's support, because unless we create a strong ecosystem allowing us to make our voice heard, a collective voice to change the situations, then I don't know how we can come out of these huge issues that the European Union has created for us. Well, they are trying to sweeten things up for us, making eco-sustainable fuels as part of the future of the EU, but they really swindled us because they only gave us 3%, saying we're talking about emission rates that are absurd. They tell us that we are clean energy, but then they give us the same emission as the other sectors. So we only get 3%, which is nothing. So we have to fight as much as possible to be and get together, work together to allow this well-to-will notion to be passed and approved, because people must be informed about what happens, and we must know what to do with the batteries, etc. Another thing that I'm always saying, and things may change in the future, I don't know, but when I look at this zero emission, well, I'm saying, well, here, but where is this electricity coming from? From your socket? Yes, but where does it come from? I have received such responses from great, managers that tell me, well, it comes from the socket. And I'm wondering, well, I'm surprised you became a manager, a big executive, when just by saying that electricity comes from the plug, but it may come from coal. And then methane, is criticized, except when it is used to produce electric power. I don't know. Solar power. NGV is totally neutral. We accept all forms of energy sources. We also work with hydrogen, etc. But everything has to occupy the right position, place. Duffield had been conceived in order to formulate, to identify the right uses for all fuels. Existing fuels are available ones. So I'm very happy with zero miles. I'm very happy with electric cars in cities or on short distances. But today, if we look at costs and at TCO, we see that electric transportation is unsustainable. The market cannot deal with it. You cannot have a big factory such as Barilla have spaghetti transported with electric lorries. I mean, this is unsustainable. Our biomethane-based truck can travel 1,500 miles. In the case of an electric truck, it doesn't have the same capacity. So we need to fight in favor of biomethane in Brussels for the EU to change biomethane rules and how emissions are estimated and counted. And that is why we were suggested by Honorable Nardella and Moratti to gather in Brussels the mayors of European cities. Nardella and Moratti are both former mayors. And Nardella was also the most recent president of the European Mayors Association. So they should be gathered in Brussels, then EBA and ECC, in order to allow the mayors to try and find an alternative energy source that they can produce in-house. Already in Milan, ATM has a small plant where organic waste is used to produce fuel. So this is one of the actions that we hope to, develop. And I invite all of you who support biomethane to help us out. We heard in the past that methane helps you out. It was a commercial, but now we think it should be biomethane. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Speroni. And let's meet again in Brussels again. So with the mayors, so we will be there. I would like now to give the floor to the general manager of Proxigas, Marta Bucci. And this morning we talked about changing scenarios and strategies that should be revised, reviewed from your standpoint. The existing model, in your opinion, needs a change of pace, and do we need to rethink something? Well, thank you for your question. First of all, good afternoon, everybody, and I wish to thank the CIB. I would like to thank President Gattoni for inviting us. We consider the CIB as being a member of our family because it's one of our members, and so we do feel close to the consortium. Today was truly an interesting opportunity to reflect. And my feeling is that, it was an opportunity to look things over, what has happened in the past 20 years. This is a year of anniversary. year we are going to turn 80, but there are also other very important firms who are celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. So it's an important one. And in this light of going over the past years, what was done and how things have changed also in terms of the energy policies that the EU should perhaps revise, sorry. We can say that our is a unique vantage point because we represent the companies that import 90% of the gas reaching Italy. They manage all of the primary infrastructures, so transportation, stockpiling, regasification, distribution networks, secondary gas networks. So thanks to this great number of members, we can really give illustrate the evolution of the gas and energy system at the national level. I would like to begin by sharing with you a reflection concerning our context, the reference context. Earlier, the member of the Commission showed us some data that somehow illustrate what is the European energy mix. Unfortunately, this data dates back to 2023. Unfortunately, I said, because in the past couple of years, what did we observe? Well, we observed a very great increase in gas consumption, something that a few years ago could not even look credible. Why? Well, because we are very much committed to promoting renewable energy sources in electricity and energy efficiencies. Also, we may be surprised that gas consumption increases. Another very surprising thing is that in the global context, the demand for gas has increased, as Andrea was telling us, by 1% in 2025. In Europe, it's more than 2%. So this Europe that is so far advanced and that wants to lead the energy transition process, in actual fact, has to manage an unexpected growth in gas consumption. So why is gas consumption increasing? Well, quite simply because we have come to realize that we cannot do without it. So we do need gas, and we use it in the final uses where electrification is not available or inappropriate in the hard-to-abate in the industrial sector. The hard-to-abate sector is not something that can be electrified, but the same goes for housing or heating. This electrification has not gained momentum yet, and as far as we can see, it's going to take a long time, but also the electrification potential is limited, and then gas is needed to produce electric power. So consumption in Europe has increased also almost by 10 billion, so a very important amount, precisely because thermoelectric power has been resorted to produce electricity. So, as Europeans in this context, we should really acknowledge that we, cannot do without gas. We still need it. It's essential, and probably it's going to be essential for our system also in the coming years.
We should think of our weaknesses, of our strengths. So the fragility of Europe is that it produces less than 10% of the gas that it consumes, 340 billion. We are the continent that produces less. China produces 60% of the gas that it consumes. The US is exporting it. So this is our biggest weakness because we depend on gas. And when, unfortunately, we have to go through such complex times like the crisis that is currently happening, this dependency is making things even more complicated. Then we should look at our strengths. What are our strengths? This morning we were talking about the synergy between worlds, the world of agriculture, the world of industry, the world of energy. Well, these are our strengths because agriculture is the tip of the sword for Italy. Energy, gas is also our best practice. The colleagues that have taken the floor before represent Snam, the first carrier in Europe, and then we'll also have the first distributor in Europe. So we are our best practices. If these are our strengths, it goes without saying that biomethane at least from our viewpoint, becomes the renewable source par excellence, so the one on which our country should focus as an absolute priority, because since it has this great quality of being programmable, so that having the sort of continuity of production can help us for security, so it's domestic production and also for sustainability. So it would be the renewable source on which Italy should focus first and foremost. We have been doing this, we've seen big changes. We see policies that are very on point, that are supporting the development of biomethane. We should do this with greater conviction, because in the national context, it's the energy source that can help us the most in terms of environmental sustainability and, above all, security. Thank you, Marta Bucci. So I think I can sum up the intentions of all our speakers here. So to relaunch, relay actually this last point to the Ministry of the Environment. That should be with us, Mr. Boschi. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, hearing from the speakers, the last one, Marta Bucci, we have realized there's a great need for biomethane. There's a great need for biomethane and biogas. So, give us the latest update on what's new up there. Well, first of all, I would like to apologize for connecting late, but it's a time full of emergency, full of emergencies. As many of you know, talking about things that are currently currently being developed, we're working on a new measure providing incentives for the production of biomethane, especially for the conversion of the biggest biogas plants to the production of biomethane. A measure that follows along the lines of the recent DL Bollette that has been converted. Over the next few years, there will be a shifting of resources that are needed today to produce biogas, to produce biomethane. This is because biomethane can make up for the carbonization need, especially in the sectors that are more difficult to decarbonize. So the carriers that deal with electricity have more difficulty getting there. On top of this cooperation, if you want to consider it this way, between gas and other sources in the production of electric energy, we have some decarbonization needs. Well, we need to identify solutions that are feasible with costs that are relatively low, and biomethane is one of such resources. So we should try to promote the production of biomethane and combine it with the consumption needs of the most difficult sectors to decarbonize, so that they could rely on decarbonization resources that are relatively cost effective. And I say relatively because we must not forget that at the end of the day, energy is an instrument, can never be an end in itself. So energy must serve a purpose, must be an input for production processes, on top of being an instrument for well-being for regular consumers, like we all are, for example, thereby contributing to production processes. And production processes being promoted at contained prices is key to guarantee the sustainability of our systems, or our industrial systems, from a financial standpoint. So an economic sustainability of the system, of the energy system, is essential. And in passing this new decree, well, in drafting this new decree, we will take into account this need, the need you're all aware of. So at the moment, guarantees of origin were introduced, especially for the hard-to-abate sectors. And this is where we're going to put all our efforts to get the best from a resource that, rightly so, is considered to be essential for decarbonization. And that is essential because it is a precious resource for certain industries. So thank you for having me, and I would like to commend you on this beautiful event. Thank you. Thank you to the head of department of the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. I guess President Baroni would like to add something. Yes, I listened very carefully. Because being a representative of road transport, and also railway transport and aviation, we will have a hard time without biomethane. So Italy is over without transportation, because it's not mozzarella cheese that is not getting to Milan, but it's everything, all the goods, all the parts. And without biomethane, we will have a hard time. So I'm asking our minister and engineer Boschi to give us a hand, to help us, and to help us continue to support the production of biomethane. Because it is not a question that we have or we don't have fuel. It is a question of guaranteeing the survival of Italy. If we love a country, we need biomethane. Otherwise, we won't go anywhere. Thank you, truly. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, Mattia Bucci, Andrea Stega.
Grazie. Allora, prego, lascio i nostri ospiti accomodarsi e chiamo gli ultimi 3 ospiti.
So I would like to call the last 3 guests for this afternoon, and then we're going to hear the conclusions with our ministers going to join us momentarily. So let's continue our debate with the director of Utile Italia, Mattia Sica, is here with us.
Ben arrivato. Con lui c'è anche
Then our agriculture coordinator for Credit Agricole Italia, Manuele Fontana.
benvenuto.
Welcome back. And last but not least, of course, the director of strategy and development, Maria Eolia Pisante.
E dunque, eccoci qua.
So here we are, our last panel for today. Let's start from you, Sika.
Abbiamo discusso
Considering everything we have talked about today and all the points we have raised, let's start from the open questions with respect to the connection of the plants. I think you've got strategies in mind or any ideas. So could you share them with us? Do you have any slides? No, I don't. I just wanted to rescue the remote because, you know, I was scared of seeing it there. I'm going to rescue it, so you might need it later. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to the celebration, this important celebration. I've seen many attendants, so I would like to congratulate the organizers on such a great turn up. Well, in Italy, we have gas distributors that have until now done their job as they should have done. So they brought energy from the high pressure transportation network to the end consumer.
È nata l'esigenza della decarbonizzazione.
When the need of decarbonization arose, and it's already been said that decarbonization is a process regarding all production sectors, affecting all production sectors, industry, transportation. For some of our members, also remote heating and end consumers. With the ETS2 now, the question of sustainability will also arise, the sustainability of certain decarbonization policies. This is the reason for which, when we realized that the question of decarbonization, also through the development of biomethane, was essential, we wondered, as electricity distributors, we've got many distributors that are our members. Well, over the past decades, we have adapted the grids to have electricity being injected into the grid from renewables, so creating smart grids. What do gas grids need to be smart themselves? And so we began to think about it and to question also our main regulator, which was ARERA. When the question of pilot projects arose, let's do pilot projects to make gas and grids develop. So we proposed the possibility for our members to develop reverse charge boxes, so where they could concretely verify what's needed to properly manage in a transparent manner a box of this kind. So, and I'm referring to transparency, but I will then reiterate this point. At the end of November last year, we organized a workshop where all the parties involved have attended, MASE, SNAM, GSE, CIG. And from those ideas, Some of the developments that we saw with the resolution of ARERA, well, those are prevailingly technical, but we believe are essential for biomethane producers that have to guarantee transparency. So there's the whole question of commercial traceability of biomethane that is injected into the grid. Even more so, if the BREMI plants are going to be realized. So there must be a time where production can be used locally, and probably there will be a reverse flow to the transport network from the distribution network. So we need to have commercial traceability that should be guaranteed to everyone, and this has been done already. So we have to make the most of experience that we have gained. There's the question of the quality of service, the pressure levels on the grids, then this voltage control. Then distributors. Hopefully, we'll have a clearer picture from a technical economic standpoint that is sustainable for injecting biomethane into the distribution networks, because we believe that the proximity of the distribution systems to production plants is a value that will be developed in the future, way more so than what has been done so far. Also in the light of the new changes introduced by the budget law. Thank you truly. Since you mentioned financials, so I will turn over to Fontana. When we mention financials, we have to talk to banks. So Crédit Agricole Italia is the banking institution you represent here. So you think of how to imagine this process. Well, you know me, and you know that I'm not an ordinary bank clerk. So I'm going to talk about biodigesters and the diet that has to be fed to them. This diet with anaerobic digesters is not only made of effluents or whatever you need to dispose of in line with the regulations or the technical specifications, but diet also includes money. So we need money, we need financial resources to implement the projects, to finalize them, to build the plans, and to eventually have access to the necessary incentives, and so to inject biomethane into the grid. And to do so, we need accurate financial planning that has to be on point. Starting from the assumption that our priority, as it has always been said, and as highlighted in a number of surveys carried out with the Bocconi University, some of which have been published. For example, sustainability in agriculture. Well, our goal is to start from farming. So what we are more interested in, then of course we could do any other plans. We are a bank, so we should make sure that everyone's happy. But our starting point, what we're interested in, is the planned used in a farming environment. For this, it is absolutely key, and I'm going to reiterate this year what I said last year, not as a warning, but just as an important piece of information. If you want to have a correct financial planning for these plants, we need to start right away. We have to start immediately, bearing in mind what the financial plan, the business plan is, the um, credit worthiness of the applicant, and a clear identification of the goals when it comes to the realization of the plant itself. This is characterized by uncertainty sometimes, but and the development of the regulatory framework. And being a development, a sort of evolution of a regulatory framework, it implies constant change, and this is not helping the bank clerks with the assessment of mere numbers, knowing nothing of anaerobic digestion of everything that lies behind a given application for funding. Oh, so the applause was for the minister. I thought it was for me. So, minister, I was surprised they were actually applauding me for what I was saying. So it's all yours. This is all yours. Anyway, I will move forward. So the development of the regulatory framework is not helping a system like the banking one, which is already closed or formalized when it comes to the regulatory settings that can help us follow funding processes for these companies, these realities. Bear in mind these three things I've mentioned, and paying a great attention to regulatory developments, we are perfectly able to support, promote the farms first and foremost, and the industries as a result that can realize these plans, starting from financial planning that has to be timely, and that's a key element for fueling the whole system. Thank you. Thank you, Emanuele Fontana, as like always. I would like to thank Mattia Sika, but please stay with us so we, create some suspense. Mattia Vittoria Pisanta Pisante is our third guest. I have to call the minister on stage. So I would like to thank our two guests that have taken the floor already. Maria Vittoria, please come closer. We can sit here, and then I will conclude with you this day, whereas I'm calling right away on stage the minister because he's got some pressing commitments. Good, good morning, good afternoon, Minister. But Piero, please join us so you can't miss this one. First of all, welcome. Microphone 4 for the minister. Does it work? Can you hear me? I wanted him here since, he harassed me for months. So let's go forward through the end. Well, I would like to bear witness of the excitement of a great community that has met here today, the Biogas Italy community, the Italian Biogas Consortium that celebrates its 20th anniversary today. And since this morning, we've heard about a reality of Italian excellence, an Italian best practice, an incredible sector in its complexity, in its diversity, that is setting a great example for Italy and Europe. We need to place more value on the question of biogas and biomethane, especially in a context of international crisis like the one we are experiencing right now. First of all, thank you, And thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your appreciation. And thank you for allowing me to take the floor shortly. Unfortunately, I'm not ubiquitous, so I can't be in two places at the same time. But I really wanted to be here. We have an extraordinary cabinet meeting that is happening at 7 p.m. today. We received a notice just a couple of hours ago. Thinking of when we began elaborating on this measure, well, the international framework has changed greatly. And probably it has made even more important the journey you have embarked on. This goal of 5.7 billion cubic meters that we have planned for 2030 becomes more and more relevant for our country. We are already the second country in Europe in terms of our ability, the ability of your businesses to produce. And the goal we had that has led us to step in was twofold. First of all, that we were
E questo non era un elemento di tranquillità per nessuno.
we were working with regulations that had not been notified. And secondly, we needed to guarantee a sort of continuity.
Naturalmente
And obviously, this was done with the first draft, then with the debates that followed, based on estimates we made.
quanti passano da
Of course, we need to understand how many manage to start producing biomethane or how many are unsuccessful. Today, we take over the costs, 70% of the costs of connection, paying on behalf of producers. But apart from this, there are so many other difficulties that we need to consider. Of course, we have a dialogue with your association and organization. We talk with the confederations of farming representatives, etc. And this has allowed us to make estimates. And of course, you know very well that when you make estimates, of course, it's always, precisely an estimate. So you need to consider that there may be differences. So there have always been and there continue to be open discussions. But despite this, with the recent amendment that was introduced and that was developed thanks to the contribution of many and that I also shared with many political forces, so this was meant precisely so that everybody could participate in amending the regulation. We try to work so as to benefit everyone. We removed some impediments. One of them was how can I commit to something that I am not sure I can achieve, or to commit to 2028 in terms of results that I don't know if I can pass from biogas to biomethane when I don't even know if I'm still going to be alive. And then what are the consequences of this? Well, at that point, we tried to soften up the formulation, and this is one of the passages. Another very important one is a short supply chain. In other words, protecting certain conditions, reference condition, and this allows us to move from the current scenario where we are at 500 million cubic meters of biomethane. Am I right with these figures? And then be able to take certain steps that will have to be monitored every year. But this is my opinion. Of course, in 2028-29, somebody will have to stop for a moment and understand who managed to achieve the outcomes, who hasn't, what to do, rather than going and buy gas from Hormuz. It would be much better to try and produce it all by ourselves, well, hoping that by then the Strait of Hormuz situation has been resolved. So I'm here to witness, to bear witness to a commitment, the commitment of my own ministry, so why all this? Because it's in the interest of our country. So from the standpoint of production of biogas and biomethane, we are one of the countries that can really, be a model for others. And even though we have this national plan for climate and energy, and even though by 2030 we would like to produce 10% in order to cover 10% of the national demand, is quite a challenge because there's a double of value. There's a collective advantage of having our own product, our own gas, and on the other hand, there is also another aspect, a great challenge that we have as a country, considering our farming sector and considering also our we want to, of course, modernize our farms and our agricultural sector. This one of the things that we are always proposed is to say that farming is just but one of the elements in the equation, but still it is essential for us to be able to further develop farming. And in some areas, the farming sector in Italy is quite unique from a geographical standpoint. We know that we do need to make great efforts, especially in some areas, because we've got so many mountains and a rather unique geography. We, of course, end up by having to carry out interventions that are not simple, but again, this is a challenge that we must all rise up to. It's a challenge for you, for your companies, and for the national government, the current one and the future one. So thank you, Minister, for your commitment. And we can reassure our entrepreneurs in the sector because, of course, biogas and biomethane seems to be increasingly important for us because it gives us a number of guarantees and protections, and it also allows us to increase our energy mix from the standpoint of renewable energy sources. Yes, this is one of the goals that we have set for ourselves and that we must reach. And we have to get to those 5.7 billion. This is the reference figure. Of course, it can be more, it can be less, but this is something I would like to be able to achieve, also to leave this as a legacy when my term is finished. This is not just your own, challenge, but it is also very much a challenge for myself. Thank you, Minister. Piero, would you like to add something? Well, Minister, I would like to start by saying something in reference to the 20 years that this consortium has celebrated. Over these 20 years, we have not always had, stable situations. Not what we are having now is very significant because we have a continuity, and also you have adopted great pragmatism in addressing these themes, and you are very much familiar with many of the aspects that are close to our heart in terms of the role to be played by farming, also in the energy sector and mix. I must acknowledge the fact that we have cooperated very effectively with your ministry, and this to say that undoubtedly what you have told us about the minimum guaranteed price is something that is reassuring for producers and allow us to this allows us to better understand how to manage our initiatives. And another thing that demonstrates your pragmatism is a reference you made to 2029 when somebody has to take stock of the situation. So we are in favor of looking to the medium term as far as biomethane is concerned. Anyway, we have celebrated this 20 years anniversary, and in this light we really want to thank you and commend you for what you have done, because it has had a very positive impact on our endeavors and commitments ourselves. So thank you so much for your presence, Mr. Minister. Mr. Pichetto Fratin, thank you again for being with us and for sharing your views. Now, Piero, please remain with us, because we have gotten to the end of the day with Maria Vittoria Pisante, who is now taking the floor. Well, this 20th anniversary was celebrated in the best possible way. So we are talking about a very young person. I mean, if we were to compare this CIB to a person 20 years old, is quite young. But I would like to share with you my witness as an industrial player that has decided to enter this market precisely to integrate this sector and change. So what the minister was saying, in other words, the need for having energy autonomy is something that is essential for us. So what does Veolia do? Well, if you are not familiar with us, we provide energy services to the public administration, managing 10% of the public real estates, and also associations of various types in the field of, catering, defense. We provide energy services for the purpose of ensuring efficiency, and we decided to become integrated. So how do we enter this market? Well, we enter it from an industrial perspective, where the essential element is represented by the time frame. We know that the market is being accessed by different players that have a more of a financial logic, but we want to be a part of it, but in the long term, to remain with it in the long term and have an agreement, make an alliance with the farming world. The farming world provides feedstock. We are united by digestate, so the logic is that of a circular economy. And therefore, ours is a partnership. We want to work together. This is our approach. And we also want to contribute to the modernization of the agricultural sector, because we can bring our cooperation in this, from the digital perspective to our commitment in the production of energy, but also in as far as our skills are concerned in the water sector. So we want to establish an alliance, thinking that also the skills that we do require from animal husbandry to agronomy is skills that you do possess. So we can also share choices in order to improve the feedstock from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint. There is a fragmentation in the market, so we can play a part in consolidating this market. So our role is a role that consists in boosting this market, creating alliances. There are some aspects on which we need to work together, and so I want to commend again Piero Gattoni because he has managed to convene the entire sector and chain. This is important. It is important to remember that we must work together. So those who work with the grid, the operators, the farmers, we must work all together. This also from the perspective of making this system efficient, because we know that the sector requires incentives, but we must show we are effective and to do everything in the best possible way. So working together is fundamental. Today we were reassured in the sense that the long-term horizon is ensured by our institutions, and we heard this from Mr. Boschi. They are working on a new decree, and it's essential again to look to the long term. And as a consequence, I do see signs for optimism, for commitment, for cooperation, and therefore we, as far as we are concerned, we are going to do our best. Thank you very much, Maria Vittoria Pisante, Director to Strategy and Development of Viola Italia. So thank you again. Piero, let us conclude this excellent day. I again wish to reinforce what the Minister said, a community that is journeying, which becomes increasingly larger and is always more and more an excellence in this country. I think you should be very proud of what you did in the past 20 years and what you will, and about what you're going to do in the coming 20. Well, I'm very proud, and we must all be very proud because we all participated in achieving the goals that we reached. And one of the things that I particularly liked in all the contributions that were made is that we do not just look to the past, but everybody was very much focused on the future. And that is why we created all these valuable connections over the years. And I was very moved in a sense, but I must also ask you to give a round of applause to the CIB team, starting from Caterina, the director, Lorella, their entire team. We must thank them for making this possible. Tomorrow it's going to be another very important day, so we will be here expecting you. And thank you again, Filippo, for moderating this day, as you always do, in an excellent manner. So see you tomorrow morning. Thank you, everyone.